Good evening. Well, one of the big stories of today, the performance of our economy. Statistics South Africa says our GDP grew by 3.1% year on year for the second quarter of the year on an annualized basis. That was above expectations, which had been at around 2.4%. Today's data means we have avoided a recession. You remember the economy shrank in the first quarter of the year. But there are, of course, huge concerns about our economy, about the number of people who are unemployed, while the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has put out a series of proposals to grow the economy. That, you might have noticed, has sparked a debate. Owen Nkomo is the Chief Investment Officer of the Nkunzi Wealth Group. He joins us now by Skype. Owen, good evening to you. Firstly, these figures better than expected. Seems the mining sector contributed to this. Why were these figures so good compared to the previous quarter?
Yeah, they were much better number, Stephen, because we're looking for anything in the range of 2% to 3%, and have come in at the higher end of the spectrum. And I think it's an indication that there are still some pockets of the sector that are doing well. So I really think that it was a positive number.
If we look at all of the data that we've been seeing, all of the news stories, certainly all of the headlines are negative. I mean, news headlines usually are. But we've been having suggestions of more jobs being lost, etc. It would seem quite hard to keep this momentum going.
No, I mean, I think it's probably one of those numbers that you have to take with a pinch of salt. If you look at the reality of the economy, people are losing jobs. Companies are shutting down. And if you're driving around Sandton and most of Johannesburg, the number of companies that are, or rather the number of auction boards, for sale boards out there, and this current social unrest that talks to the fact that people are unemployed and they're looking for work to sustain themselves is testament to the fact that things are not going well in the country. It's a number for a quarter. Let's see how the next quarter looks, and let's see how the next few years look. But importantly, I think we need to take some big hammer decisions that will tilt the scale here, Steve.
Right, you talk about big hammer decisions. I mean, everyone's been talking about this. What for you are the key issues that need to be sorted out? And I realize, Owen, this can be politically contested territory.
It is definitely, because the first thing I'll tell you is don't do the NHI. Honestly, don't do the NHI. We don't have the budget for it. We need to fix what we currently have. We need to fix the health infrastructure we have. We need to fix the administration in the hospitals that we have. We need to make sure that we've got the budgets to make the current expenditure, which we actually don't have at the moment. I mean, the SARS is not collecting enough revenue for us to pay for NHI. And for example, you need to start talking about whether or not we can sustain the social grants culture, whether or not we can sustain the creation of RDP houses because of the budget. If it's so said that these are some of the things we may have to sacrifice, whereas they are needed by the people who are most vulnerable in our community. We would sustain these things if we ran a budget that had excess cash in it, but we don't. And what it's doing is that continuing on this trajectory without at least reducing, if not totally cutting, just reduce to an extent some of these provisions. It allows the country breathing room. It allows the budget to breathe so that we have a country to run after the next 10, 20 years. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a position where the lights are off totally and no one is in accommodation. We need to sort out SCOM. You need to sort out the state-owned enterprises. You need to reduce the government wage bill. You need to obviously deal with corruption because that's where most of the cash that the government collects actually ends up leaking to.
Okay, I mean, obviously within all of this, the proposals from the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, they've been strongly criticised by the SABC and COSATU, and I think you'd probably agree that Governor Emeritus Mboweni was expecting that. Do you believe that this plan is on the right track? Big business likes it, Labour doesn't.
What else is there, Stephen? No one has proposed anything else. So I'm really excited that Minister Mboweni has gone and sat down and he thought about this and has proposed it to the country for debate. People have got until the 15th of this month to voice their views. But here's my problem, Stephen. People are very quick to judge. People are very quick to criticize without coming up with their own ideas. I mean, I think here's a framework that's been suggested by Minister Mboweni, and I think that we need to work around that and improve on it, than criticize it and slash it to pieces. It doesn't matter whether he went home and he thought about it and he came out with this thing, but the thing is, he is doing something and is highlighting the simplest fixes that we need to do to get the economy going. And I do think he needs credit for that, he needs support for that. Otherwise, we're just being romantic about things when Rome is burning. Johannesburg, Pretoria is literally burning. We need to be dealing with these issues. And I think that what the Minister Mboweni has given us is a good starting point that will help the country start to address some of these issues. We need to deal with state-owned enterprises. Like I said, can't keep funding the state-owned enterprises when the economy is not growing.
Right, I mean, within all of this, there's quite complicated politics. The ANC released a statement today saying that plan, the Mboweni proposals, if I can call them that, are going to go to ANC branches to now be discussed. Do you think any of it's ever going to actually be implemented?
You see, that's a problem right there. We like to talk a lot. We like to sit and discuss, and at the end of the day, it's just talk shows. No action gets taken. There are very easy wins in the suggestions that Minister Mboweni is suggesting, like the issue of spectrum. I mean, it's something that the government can just decide on those things. I mean, the issue around some of the state-owned enterprises. We've known that some of these state-owned enterprises are an Achilles tendon to our economy, and they needed to be dealt with over the past 10 years. But nothing is being done. People are going to be romantic about it and choose their political side or choose their union side and forget about South Africa Incorporated, which urgently needs a good dose of a very big injection of life into the system so that we can maintain this economy or see the economy grow. Otherwise, we're fighting over these things. We might not have a country that is half of what it is in the next 10 to 15 years. And the solutions need to start getting implemented now, in my view, Stephen.
One of the big variables in all of this, Owen, I mean, you've already mentioned it, Eskom. Some experts have suggested we're sleepwalking into more load shedding. There's still no radical change at Eskom from what we can see from the outside. How worried are you about what's happening or not happening at Eskom and what that could do to our economy?
I'm very worried because one of the biggest challenges that the country is dealing with at the moment is a manifestation of a growing debt to the nation's GDP. And if that number continues to grow, which is probably the only way that Eskom can sustain any capital requirements for the organization, if that number continues to grow, we will struggle to pay any of our liabilities. We might, within the next decade, start defaulting on some of our payments. Inflation might rise. We might get rolling blackout that we might not be able to reverse. Trust me, once we get to that stage, the IMF is our only solution. And at that stage, the things that Minister Mboweni is suggesting now are not going to be optional. They are going to be compulsory, and we're going to feel the pain of being forced to live under serious austerity measures. Right now, we still have some room to maneuver. And I think we need to stop being proud. Corporate South Africa, Union South Africa, Government South Africa, and Electorate South Africa needs to sit around the table and say, guys, you know what? Things are really difficult. We need to act, or else we're going to regret it.
Owen, I mean, people have been talking for years about the moment of crisis in South Africa in terms of the economy that would lead to reform. Everyone's spoken about the need for deep reform. I think even the president did when he was in campaigning mode. Yet it hasn't happened. Why do you think that is? Is that to do with politics? Is it because of racialized inequality? In other words, the different role players are just too far away from each other still?
No, I think that in my view, the race issue is a big one. It's just not trust, in my view, from white corporate South Africa and the government, and general corporate South Africa and the government. You know, some of the tough decisions that will have to be made will have to be solved sometimes by the private sector and sometimes by the government. But because there's this big divide on a racial basis, we wouldn't cross that bridge. And then I think the willingness to act and the ability to act, in my view, by the leading party is starting to be questioned as well, in the sense that there are simple decisions that can be made, but those decisions are not being made. They are being delayed, and this delay is to the detriment of the country, it's to the detriment of the main industry who's trying to get a job. And unfortunately, we are living, Stephen, continuously on a socialist ticket in a capitalist system. You can never sustain that. We need to make up our minds and decide which way we want to go as a country. Because I think some guys might say you might want to ban those two, but it's not working. We don't have access in our budgets. We cannot continue to carry social responsibilities off a very thin tech base. Something has to give, and I believe that it has to give quite urgently. We're still being very romantic at this stage in the country, and I don't think it's going to help us.
All right, Owen Nkomo, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate the time. Chief Investment Officer at the Nkunzi Wealth Group there, Owen Nkomo.